it's Libby, and I'm going to be looking at risk factors for diseases. Risk factors are factors that increase the probability of developing a disease. Often, non-communicable diseases arise due to the interaction of numerous risk factors. Risk factors can be placed into one of two categories. First of all, substances. Substances can be in both the individual's body or the environment. For example, the chemicals inhaled when smoking. And lifestyle. For example, an unbalanced diet or not enough exercise. So what are the two risk factors? Substance and lifestyle. So just to recap again, then substance and lifestyle. Substance would be something like smoking, and lifestyle would be something like having a bad diet or not taking a lot of exercise. Many links have been identified between risk factors and the probability of getting certain diseases. Scientists investigate links to make sure that the risk factor is causing the disease and not something else. Finding causal mechanisms is the way to prove a link. Examples of these mechanisms include obesity. So obesity is a proven risk factor for type 2 diabetes. Cardiovascular disease. A poor diet, smoking, and lack of exercise are proven risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Lung disease. Smoking is a proven risk factor for lung diseases. Liver and brain damage. Excessive alcohol intake is a risk factor for liver and brain damage. Low birth weight of babies. So smoking during pregnancy is a proven risk factor for the low birth weight of babies. Brain damage in babies. Excessive alcohol consumption during pregnancy is a proven risk factor for brain damage in babies. And cancer. Exposure to ionizing radiation is a proven risk factor for cancer. So let's just think back about what we've just learned. We know that smoking during pregnancy can cause low birth weight of babies, and excessive alcohol consumption during pregnancy can cause brain damage in babies. And we know that smoking is a proven risk factor for lung disease and lung cancer. Risk factor graphs. When considering risk factors, scientific data uses samples, a small set of data. A sample of people is taken and the incidence of a risk factor is counted, as well as the incidence of a disease. So for example, if you wanted to know the risk factor between smoking and small birth weights, you'd look at a sample and you would count how many people in this sample have had a baby with a lower weight and how many people have smoked during pregnancy. And then you try and identify whether there's a significant overlap between these people. Were lots of babies with low birth weights born from mothers who smoked during pregnancy, and so on. Then from the sample data, a graph, such as a bar chart, can be plotted, showing the incidence of the disease for those who have the risk factor, and the incidence of the disease for those without. If the risk factor can have a range of risk, e.g. number of cigarettes versus just do they or don't they smoke, a scatter diagram can be plotted, showing the incidence of the disease plotted against the number of cigarettes smoked per day. So if we are going to use the example of cigarettes, we know that smoking is linked to lung disease and lung cancer. So that might be what you're investigating. So if we were to look at a graph where we were looking at the number of cigarettes smoked per day versus the incidences of cancer per 100,000 men, and we saw that as the number of cigarettes smoked per day was increasing, the incidences of cancer were also increasing. We would say that this is a positive correlation between smoking and cancer in men. So risk factors, just to recap on the definition of them as we just talked about them, are factors that increase the chance or the probability of developing a disease. So it doesn't necessarily mean you will develop it, but it increases the chance. So why is it important for scientists to scrutinize for links between risk factors and the probability of getting certain diseases? This is to ensure that it is actually the risk factor that's causing the disease and not something else altogether. So maybe if you were looking at smoking, it might not actually be the cigarettes. It might be because people often go outside to smoke and maybe it's something outside. That's something they might want to consider. And also finding causal mechanisms is the way to prove a link. So data which is counted for risk graphs are first of all the incidence of a risk factor and also the incidence of the disease. So that's everything for risk factors. Thanks very much for listening.